Hello and welcome to today's episode of Let's Talk Loyalty and Loyalty TV. And we're heading to Australia to hear all about driving loyalty with the Super Retail Group. The Super Retail Group is one of Australia and New Zealand's largest retailers and a public company since 2004, having established leading positions across various lifestyle categories as the proud owner of 4 iconic brands: Supercheap Auto, Rebel, BCF and Macpac. Our guest is Aaron Fuller, General Manager of Member Engagement for the Super Retail Group, where he and his colleagues are helping more than 10 million members live out their passions in sport, fashion, automotive and the great outdoors. Aaron shares their latest exciting propositions already launched, as well as some fascinating insights on the consumer psychology insights that he believes that we, as loyalty professionals, need to understand in order to optimize our programs. I really hope you enjoy our conversation. So, Aaron Fuller, welcome to Let's Talk Loyalty and Loyalty TV.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's wonderful to have you. I know it's late on a Friday evening, Aaron, so with all of the time differences, adds a little bit of complication, but we are thrilled to have you. I know there's some very exciting work going on there with the Super Retail Group, which is the first time I'm hearing all about it. So we have a lot to get through today. So let's kick off straight away with our favorite opening question. As you know, Aaron, we're always keen to get inside the mind of loyalty professionals around the world. So why don't you tell our global audience what is your favorite loyalty program?
Thanks, Paula. Look, it's a great question. It didn't take me long to think about the answer when you asked me, which was a local supermarket here in Australia called Woolworths. We have 2 big supermarket chains down here in Australia that dominate, Woolworths and Coles, and the Woolworths loyalty program is called Everyday Rewards. And for me, as a loyalty geek, it just ticks every box. The amount that they've invested in data science, in personalization, in offers, the ability for them to now fine-tune the offers based on the behaviour they want to change. So I see it and love it both as a customer and also as someone in the industry looking at what they do time and time again. And beyond what the sort of obsession I have with what they do and how good they are at doing it and the interface and the digital experience, it also got me enough points over the last decade to get me and my wife to Positano in Italy, first class on Emirates, which is about 380,000 points. And so I thank them and all their generous offers, which they'd send me over a decade to get me that many points on promotion.
OMG, holy Lord. That's an extraordinary achievement, Aaron. So well done you. Well done to Woolworths and their everyday rewards. I have no idea. I mean, I've certainly never managed to redeem such a long-haul flight with a partner on a beautiful carrier like Emirates. So well done you. You said it took about a decade to get that many points together for it, yeah?
Yeah, look, it's sort of not an embarrassing story, but effectively they have a points program and they give you a point per dollar spend, but obviously they have below the line offers. And so every other week when they saw I wasn't buying nappies or diapers, depending on the language that you use, they'll send me an offer that says buy these Huggies nappies, which normally were $35, you normally earn 35 points.
Yeah.
But if I bought them on a particular day or a particular week, then I'd earn 600 points. So a big, 20 times points multiplier. So obviously nappies don't go out of date. And having 5 kids over the last 10 years, there was no shortage of nappies that we were going through. And so we did the maths. It was about, on average, about 4,000 points a week I could rack up, which over the months and the years quickly became a big number. And so, in the end, it was enough to and one of the benefits of the program is you can convert those. You can choose between vouchers at the Everyday Rewards, the Woolies store, or you can redeem those on Qantas transfer those points to Qantas points. So I transferred them to Qantas points, and then Emirates is a partner of Qantas, and so redeemed those flights. So it was basically a decade of changing nappies got me first class to Positano.
Honestly, I hope Woolies fully appreciate how much loyalty you have demonstrated right there. And you've already admitted to being a loyalty geek, and you've just proven it. So congratulations on your very amusing consumer behavior, and a lesson to all of us to make sure all of our campaigns are optimized to appeal to people like you, so that we can behave in ways that are beneficial, I guess, to the business as well as to the consumer, so everybody feels the love. So listen, that's perhaps one of the best answers that we've had on the show. And I think I said to you off air, you already had the best loyalty story that I think I'd ever heard, purely from a post I saw on your LinkedIn profile. So I'm going to ask you now just to share the story about the Australian Loyalty Association, obviously our friends there, and the particular personalised experience you had at the conference this year with them.
Yes, look, it was a moment of huge pleasure and also terrible guilt that when the invite came out, as do all these events that we go to, the question came up about dietary requirements. And for at least decades, when that question's come up, I've always put the same answer, which is lobster and Dom, as in Dom Perignon. And I've never received such a meal on said event, despite me putting that as my dietary requirements, except for the ALA event, where I sat down and saw everyone getting the traditional meat and chicken alternative similar to a wedding, and then there came my lobster and champagne. And at that point, my throat, I had to swallow relatively hard as I looked around and everyone looked at me. And I'm like, oh, shit.
I think it's brilliant. It's hilarious. And again, it just proves, I mean, just for the actual viral value of the fact of us having this conversation alone, hopefully makes it worthwhile for the ALA. So well done you for saying something that is amusing to everybody around and giving us the opportunity to hear that story. So again, a loyalty geek, Aaron, what can I say? Much.
It's interesting. I haven't received a single invite to a single event post that. So maybe it wasn't such a smart idea in the end.
Okay. Please God, you'll be allowed back next year. You probably won't get the same. It'll be interesting to see how they behave. You'll have to up the ante. So totally changing the dynamics, confusing the whole conference organisation side. But but a brilliant story. So listen, let's get into the Super Retail Group, Aaron. A lot of our audience, as you know, are based around the world, in the US, the UK, of course in Australia as well. But for those people who don't know SRG, would you mind just giving us an introduction to the business, please?
Yeah, sure thing. SRG, Super Retail Group, is what we stand for, and we're made up of 4 brands. The oldest brand in the stable is a brand called Supercheap Auto. It's been going for almost 50 years. I think it's they're coming up to their 50th birthday, and it's a phenomenal business that was started up by a family, and the family is still involved in that business. And they are effectively in the automotive space. So if you think about its competitors, include Repco, Autobahn, etc. Some big global ones there, and we're a phenomenal business and continue to grow quite rapidly, as per the last couple of reports have stated. So a fairly successful business, really loyal, sort of obsessed customers and members in that business. Then we've got Rebel Sports. So in the US, sort of Dick's Sporting Goods is another shop which some of the American sort of people may be aware of. And Rebel Sport is by far the largest Australian sort of retailer. We've got over a couple of hundred stores. I think combined, the 4 brands have got almost 700 stores. I think is the number that I read, which includes sport. It includes Supercheap Auto. BCF is a brand, and BCF is it used to stand for boating, camping, fishing. We don't refer to that anymore when in our marketing and branding. Although some of our long-term customers still come in and still have boating, camping, fishing shirts. I see those floating around every now and then. And a really interesting brand where in Australia, as you know, love the outdoors here in Australia. So we spend a lot of time camping, a lot of time fishing, a lot of time forward driving. And so we're fortunate that we've got such a good sort of vast sort of range in that brand. And then the 4th brand is Macpac, which we acquired a couple of years ago as a group. And that was really quite an amazing story. Macpac makes some phenomenal gear in regards to traditionally hiking. If I remember back in the mid-90s, before you used to put your backpack on and go backpacking around the world, you used to have a Macpac backpack, and that was my first experience with the product in about 1995, and I've still got that backpack.
Wow.
So really, really well-made gear. They've obviously diversified their range now, and we've summarized that business, so to speak, in terms of having more than just winter gear. So we've got some phenomenal summer range out in stock, and that's a great business as well. They're primarily in New Zealand, but they've got a much more established presence traditionally in New Zealand, with a huge growth in stores here in Australia as well.
Amazing. So we'll be getting into, I suppose, how you think about loyalty across all 4 of the brands just in a minute, I guess. But before we get into all of those different types of propositions and understanding what you do, tell us about your career. How did you get to this particular role in SRG?
Yeah, it's interesting when we look back and think to ourselves, how on earth did we get here? So I guess spent the best part of the late 90s and early 2000s in sort of pure marketing roles. Then moved into data and digital and analytical roles. The early 2000s, when sort of internet was becoming more sort of mainstream, and we were starting to use computers at work and at home. And then social media, the launch of social media and Facebook, and programmatic and paid search and Google. So I rode that sort of digital wave and sort of sat between analytics, performance, media, and marketing. And I spent some time at Qantas launching their breakout businesses in the ventures. So launched a few of the businesses there, and a wellbeing business where we gave you and still do give Qantas points for things like walking, running, sleeping. It's a whole bunch of really cool things that we're building out there to increase the ability for Australians to keep on earning Qantas points. And then for my sins, spent the last 2 years of my 7-year stint at Qantas over in the airline, away from loyalty, operations, head of customer operations and head of design role at Qantas, right in the smack bang in the middle of COVID, which was a phenomenal time. There was no flying and borders closed, so it was an interesting time to be alive, working for. So we came out of that. We built the COVID vaccine app with all the other airlines and all the IATAs of the world. And then I decided it was enough aviation for me, so I went over and thought, well, I've done banking, I've done and spent some time at Red Cross. So it's been a couple of years at Red Cross in a CRM role. I've spent 10 years in insurance. All types of insurance, both GI and also life insurance and pet insurance. And so I thought, well, what's next? I find myself in customer data, digital roles. So thought retail was something to go and play around in. So we moved the family away from Sydney up to the Gold Coast, and fortunate to work with Supercheap across there and in their strategy and customer team.
Okay, incredible. And quite a sizable customer base from what I've seen. I looked at the latest annual reports, of course. I think 10.5 million members is the latest number. So that's essentially, I suppose, the customer base that you're taking care of. So would you mind talking us through the membership model, Aaron? Because I know, again, in different markets and different businesses, of course, there's differences of paid membership versus just, free membership. So how does SRG think about membership?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And I think if whatever our answer we discussed today, we ask ourselves in a year and we probably rethink it or, re-prosecute it again. So certainly I'm very mindful that these aren't fixed views, but the views at the moment across our brands is that we're very much around a membership which is trying to extract and drive as much value for members as possible that creates lifetime, long-term sticky customers. And traditionally, as you say, we've got about 10.5 million active members. So that's have shopped in the last 12 months. The number is quite bigger than that if you look at customers who have lapsed or are inactive over the last 12 months. But 10.5 million active members. Apart from the supermarkets, there's not very many other organisations in Australia that have that type of active membership base. And each brand have their own proposition. Now, it's interesting we talk about paid because we'll start with Supercheap. They've got, I think the last reported number was sort of high 3 million active members.
Okay.
And again, from a sort of a report perspective, which in terms of 8 out of 10 customers who come in say I'm a member, and they've only got. So part of that is club pricing. So we don't have a huge club pricing strategy in Supercheap Auto compared to some of the other brands, but it certainly is a feature, and members always want more sort of club pricing. But up until about 2 years ago, there was a $5 fee for that membership. And so when we took it away to try and remove friction and also to try and grow the base, we were hypothesis, what would that do for customers? Would you get sort of members that join because it's free but don't necessarily shop as much or spend as much? And what we've seen in the last 2 years is we've seen no difference in that membership between the $5 fee and the free members, or members signing up for free, which has been really, really pleasing to see, because I thought we were expecting some decline sort of spend, because often when you pay for something, it's a bit like going to the gym, paying for a fitness instructor, you think you better get value out of it. So we did look at that. So that was interesting. So we have looked at that. We look at subscription models. Amazon Prime is obviously a phenomenal proposition. And certainly there's other players here in Australia that are going down that route as well, in regards to you have your free model, and then if you pay a bit extra, a bit like Uber and Uber Pass, then you can unlock more value. So we're certainly not exploring that. But again, the future is a long, windy road. So who knows what the future holds. But in terms of at the moment, our current thinking is definitely around how to create customer value propositions and program designs for each of the brands that do really, I guess, three core things, which is we want more members to consider shopping with us because of our loyalty proposition. But I have to believe that customers, not many customers, maybe there's a few, but customers typically don't love your loyalty program. They love your brand, but typically they'll be typically part of the reason why they stay and why they come back more. And so with Supercheap Auto, we've got this great proposition, and we're the only brand in the stable at the moment to do this, which is a proposition called Best Price Credit.
Okay.
So how this works, Paula, is and customers absolutely love this, which is if you buy something and it's say $40 today, let's say you buy 3 litres of oil for $40, and that goes on sale for $20 so on a one-day sale, we will automatically, if you're opted into the program, we'll automatically give you the check, or the proverbial check. We'll give you $20 credit in your account, and we'll send you an email and/or an SMS to say, great news, Paula, that item you bought in the last 14 days has gone on sale. Here's the difference. Now, that creates a sense of trust and real sort of surprise and delight, because customers can't game that. They don't know when things are going on sale. So it's not like you can go and pay in for that. And so it's always a surprise and delight. We issue, a whole chunk of credit across the year to customers. We obviously plan for that. When we know something's going to go on sale, we know exactly how much credit from a provisioning perspective, from a balance sheet perspective. We obviously need to account for how much credit we're going to issue when something goes on sale. So the interplay between our merch team, our marketing team, our loyalty team is joined at the hip, because you can't just go and do a one-day sale when you've got a proposition like Best Price Credit, realising that you're about to go and put a whole bunch of credit in the market. Now, what we've seen is for as long as I've been here and much longer, is when customers get that, the redemption of that credit is really high, which is what we want. And the incremental spend on top of that is phenomenal. And so we create this virtual loop of customers coming in because of they were either an existing member or they saw a product online and thought that's the product that I need or want, and they came into us for either convenience or other reasons or price. And then they've that product, and if it does happen to go on sale, they get a message saying here's the difference in your account. They've got 14 days then to use that credit. And then again, so we see a pretty healthy redemption of that credit. And for us, from a commercial perspective, we're trying to drive visitation across all of our brands. The average visitation is somewhere between 3 to 4 visits on average across the year. So we're not a supermarket where customers are coming into us multiple times a week. Now, we obviously have customers that do come in weekly. There's customers, depending on what you're buying and who you absolutely, we do see some customers coming in a lot frequently, but as an average, 3 to 4 shops a year. So we're looking for program design mechanics that go, okay, well, there's program and there's There's sort of spend and get trials that we've run, and there's birthday credits that we'll issue because you've been with us for a while, or it happens to be birthday, which is stock standard for loyalty programs, and they behave just credit like that behaves. But when you give a credit because they've purchased something that's gone on sale, it behaves very, very differently to than if you're just giving out free birthday credit in terms of
course,
incremental. So that's a superpower that we've recently just launched. Supercheap have just relaunched their loyalty campaign with some above the line material, and we've really gone to town with leveraging that proposition, because of those members that know about it absolutely love it, and we probably capture a nice healthy share of wallet for that group of customers. But for lots of customers that aren't aware of it, whether that's they bought something that either didn't go on sale or did go on sale but they didn't read or didn't get the email or the SMS, then we want to really sort of amplify the amount of people in our current base that we understand that proposition, because we think it's a great defense strategy to our competitors, who are really great competitors and really worthy competitors. So for us, that's a great business model. And we have just, I think it's almost 4 million members, active members in that, and growing. So really, really successful. So yes, we for retailers, we have a lapse, a relatively sort of significant lapse customer, because they just don't need the products of which they're buying anymore. But in regards to members coming in, and then once they're in, experiencing the brand, and I think it goes into, I know others talk about sort of the joy of loyalty, and for me, it's about the dopamine effect. And this is really sort of from a science perspective, when you give that customer a redemption opportunity, and when you give that customer some credit of something that they did that they weren't expecting, with the ability to then go and redeem that, it's a double prize, because redemption in itself is as old as day where you get your 10th coffee for free, which works, and it's why we stay loyal to our local coffee shops, because A, we like the coffee, but B, we're building up stamps for free coffee. It's the same in aviation, where if you fly Sydney, Melbourne, you'll end up, after 9 times, you'll end up with enough points to get a free, well, not what we call a free flight, but a redemption flight with points. And that's whether you're flying Virgin or whether you're flying with Qantas here domestically. It's sort of the 10-for-1 model. It's almost the same as the coffee cart model. And so we've come to expect that, but it's also enough why we make those decisions where, one of the things I used to ask all the students when I'm lecturing strategic marketing at UNSW, the question I always ask is, everyone stand up, and if there's four domestic airlines, and a Sydney-Melbourne trip can range from $99 to, call it, $399. They all leave at the same time, the flight duration is the same time, and the seat dimension is the same. And we question, why are certain people making certain decisions at that point? Because it's the same. The rational mind would say it's the same hour, it's the same seat. So when we get into it, it's actually the points and the status credits that I get makes me make a certain decision. And it's what program I end up in, and all the affiliate partnerships that those programs have. And so that they make, I like to say, they make rational people do irrational things. When loyalty is designed well, we would all probably consider ourselves rational. But my story earlier around nappies and Positano, I would wait and hunt around until they're going to send me a nappy offer. And so a rational person waiting for a nappy offer is probably an irrational behaviour on the surface. But when you get addicted into that program, then for me that's really great. So Supercheap have got a phenomenal program. Rebel, we've just launched after, I think, 16 years. Rebel Active has been around for, which is the loyalty program, a revamped program where we give you a point for every $1 that you spend above the line. So you walk in, let's say you buy a pair of Asics for $250 prior to October. The benefit you got from buying that was basically not very much for Rebel. There was, unless something was club price. Then there was nothing on the table. Now, when you buy that shoe, and it's one of the biggest selling shoes in terms of the Asics, we now give you $12.50 worth of points. So you get 250 points for that $250 pair of shoe. And if you think about other things we sell in Rebel, we sell $1,000 treadmills to $2,000 rowing machines to greater. You imagine that pre-October, customers who are asked when they're buying that product, are you a member? They would say no. Would you like to be? They would say no. And I've witnessed that counter over the last couple of weeks, that same question, and where the members sort of says no, and then the sort of the staff say, well, you know, you're doing 250 points today, that's $12.50. Loss aversion kicks in, and unless you really hate Rebel, unless you really hate loyalty programs, of which there's some out there, of course, the answer to that question is now yes. And we're only just begun. So we've intentionally launched with a base program. We're now starting to do what Woolies and the great loyalty programs do, which is send individuals below the line offers, SMS and email, saying, Paula, if you buy coffee this weekend, because our personalization engine has worked out you're the type of person that has drinks coffee, but equally we haven't seen you for a while, and so we're trying to get that behaviour back in. Then we'll give you, and then we'll get you to sort of activate that offer, and you come in, you earn double or triple points on those particular products. And we've got thousands and thousands of SKUs. And so if you imagine Rebel, whether you're an AFL supporter or an NRL supporter, an NFL supporter, whatever sport you're into, depending on what's on, is if you buy, if you buy tennis, what else can you buy? If you buy swimmers, do you buy the goggles? So how do we think about points over the next 12 to 24 months in ways to change behavior from you just coming in buying a pair of shoes to going, well, if we bundle a bunch of complementary products around that's fed from our personalization engine, we can send you an offer that says, if you bundle A, B, and C, we will only, we've given you the product selection that's relevant to you, and B, will give you an offer that actually makes you do that, where at the moment you may be choosing other stores to do that. And we see that big share of wallet game changer. So really the trick for Rebel Sport was to say, how do we get you by sometimes, Nike, for example, is a great partner of ours, is Adi and Puma and Asics. We've got some great trade partners in that business. That a lot of them have their own stores in the same shopping centres where we are. Now, sometimes we differentiate on range. But why would our Rebel members, prior to launch, travel 5 floors of Westfields to buy the shoe that they can buy in potentially 20 other stores? So for us, that was a really important launch into the market, where we said we needed a device and a mechanism that gets you to make that decision that says, you know what, I'm a Rebel Active member. I know they sell that. They now have points on the product, and we give you points on every dollar you spend, and then you get 6 months to redeem those points. And again, we look at the average shop of our customer. It's sort of every 3 to 4 times a year. So we make sure we've designed it where you're not sort of upsetting customers by expiring their points before the shop comes in. And of course, points expiry is part of any loyalty program to drive the incremental, because if you've earned that 250 points and we haven't seen you for a few months, we want to make sure that we as a marketer, we always think marketers think breakage is bad. So it's always the sort of the marketing versus the finance view in terms of how we look at breakage. But of course, if you believe breakage is bad, as marketers do, because you want to keep the customer happy for a longer time, then you want to make sure they don't break, and you want to make sure that you communicate to them value of the points that they've got. You want to make sure that that loss aversion kicks in, where customers go, again, if you say that my $12.50 is about to expire and I earned that, that's very different than just giving me $12.50 for free on my birthday, where I'm like, well, you didn't earn it. And it's really interesting from a psychology perspective how different they behave.
Yeah. My goodness, I'm almost, I don't know where to start, Aaron, with all of those wonderful insights. The first piece that I really like is, at the point of sale, so many of us are invited or asked, of course, by the staff member about, whether or not we're a member. And certainly in this part of the world, I've often said actually that, there just doesn't seem to be the level of training needed for the staff member to give me a good reason to join. They go through the script and they just kind of say, if you're not a member, okay, fine, and they'll just let you away with it almost. But it sounds like you really have your staff engaged and understanding the actual value. So, the actual reward rate, I think I saw it's a 5% reward rate. So if they can calculate that on the particular product and have that specific compelling reason for this customer. So if you're standing in front of me to be able to say it's your $12.50, are you having that consistently coming through with your staff, or is that something that you're still working on? Where would you say in terms of, consistently having that message at the point of sale?
Absolutely. So it's for us, the change management process that we put around the launch of that product was so important that the 6,000 members that we've got across the Rebel stores, as well as the online experience. If you go onto the website, one of the things that we launched very quickly after launch, listening to some customer feedback, was you're looking at a pair of shoes or a tennis racket, or very quickly is put a widget on the website that, irrespective of what you're looking at, it will tell you what points are available. And that's obviously great from, if you're comparing, if you're, whether you're a Rebel customer or whether you're new to Rebel or considering joining Rebel, and you're looking at a product on Google that you've seen on multiple different shops, and they're all within dollars and cents of each other, all of a sudden we can say, by the way, we're competitive on price, but we've also got a points proposition, which is real dollars for you to use on your next purchase.
Amazing. Okay, useful. Again, keep it simple, remove the friction, take away the mental gymnastics and just give them the answer, which is, here's an extra reason. So I guess that's the ultimate purpose of loyalty. When all else is equal, here's a way to stand out head and shoulders above that. So so that's brilliant. So certainly, I know we're recording obviously now at the end of 2023. I think we're going to be releasing this episode, so people will be listening in early 2024. So I think as time goes on, of course, hopefully you'll keep us up to date on all of the amazing insights as the program starts to mature and you do start to publish some of those results. The other piece I wanted to just pick up on, I suppose, is I know your personalization piece you've emphasized is absolutely the single biggest, I think, compelling difference with this program relaunch. And I want to say a quick thank you to our friends at Epsilon for introducing us first and foremost. I know they're supporting you with that program and launch. So how would you say you're doing on that journey of personalization? Because what I tend to hear, Aaron, is absolutely the holy grail is, as you said, send Aaron the nappies offer. We know he's good for it. So really to have the data insights and use it. But I think in many cases, it just takes a lot of time and it's quite a complex experience to try and master using the data. So how do you think the Rebel Active program is doing at this early stage in terms of your personalization?
Yeah, absolutely. So just on Epsilon, so we made the decision around 2 years ago to build our loyalty CRM platform with Epsilon. So I think we're one of the first, if not the first, sort of large retailer here in Australia with Epsilon, owned by Publicis. So a phenomenal partnership. I joined pretty much as we started kicking off the project, and a really lean, really agile team with global expertise and everything that we wanted to do. So I think from a partnership perspective, we've all worked with big tech before, and sometimes the appeal of what you're buying quickly gets sort of a bit disappointed when you actually get into delivery, where you realise that the salespeople sold you a beautiful dream that's much harder to implement. So I certainly think personally that not sort of pumping up the tires too much, that I think that they've got the mix right between technology, a really accessible team. And so then overlay that, where we want to get to is, how do we think about personalisation where Woolies are at today, with using a personalisation capability to fine tune, almost customise the offer one-to-one, beyond just the product recommendation one-to-one. So we have, on any given day, we have over 100,000 variations of a personalisation at play for BCF and for Supercheap, who are the two brands that we're currently running on personalisation. And sometimes it's up to 500,000 variations on a particular day on the different ways in which the machine has said that this email might send 2 million emails out on Tuesday. But there's actually, as I said, between 100 to 500,000 different variants of that email based on what the algorithms and the scoring of that article is getting out to a member. So almost you could say there's no two same emails going out from Supercheap and from BCF, because they're live at play at the moment for personalisation. When we bring these forces together in February, March around personalisation capability as well as loyalty, then I think we unlock something pretty special. And as I said, Woolies have been doing this for a while. Other brands are playing in this space at the moment. I'd be interested to understand whether Mecca, I know Mecca, we're sort of friends with Mecca, and I think I think they're on a similar journey to try and work out how we stitch these things together. And ultimately, for me, it's two sides of the same coin when I think about loyalty and personalisation. What we really want to do is build a relevance machine, because ultimately, no customer has ever said in the history that I'm aware of that stop being so relevant to me. And I think that that's the game we're all playing. And sometimes if you can, I remember reading this statement once, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it was, if a customer can explain easily your loyalty program, then you probably haven't got it right. At the same time, if they can't explain it, you probably haven't got it right either. So it's, if you can't make it simple enough to understand, then you'll have lost customers. And we're guilty. Lots of us in the industry are guilty of making very complex, tiered, structured programs sometimes, of which we think customers will love, but they just don't fathom it. And the flip side of that is, if it doesn't create a feeling beyond the transaction, you also haven't got it right, which is to my point around customers shouldn't be able to, they should be able to understand it, but not explain it necessarily how it makes them feel. And back to that sort of concept is, it needs to be part of the brand experience. It can't be an adjunct to the rest of the business. It can't be seen as the guys over there doing offers on emails. Like if that's where your loyalty program's at, then you're going to find it hard to win.
For sure, for sure. Well, listen, I can hear that you're on a very exciting journey. As you've said, you've got Rebel Active launched and ramping up in a pretty dramatic way by all accounts. I know you've got some of your other brands rolling out, I think, later this year or in the coming years. So I think it's important from my side to obviously make sure that you feel excited and welcome to come back on Loyalty TV to share this story with us on a regular basis, because I feel like the learnings in 12 months are going to be off the charts. So I really hope that you're happy to continue sharing these insights with us, because there's an awful lot of knowledge there. My final, I suppose, question at this stage is just around that love of science and psychology that you're talking about so passionately, Aaron. You know, you've talked about the dopamine hit, and I remember when I first joined a loyalty program at 25 years of age, or got my first credit card with points on it, I felt like a junkie, and I was very conscious, and I described my behavior in that way. Even kind of knowing that wasn't a great word to be using for myself, but I knew I was doing something different and that I had a reason to do that. But you've talked about things like, as well, the nudge and striving incentives. Where would you suggest people kind of look to, I'm thinking of this audience, Aaron. So in terms of learning about the science and the psychology, where do you get those insights from? Where can we get more understanding of tapping into, whether it's FOMO or, striving or whatever? I just think that knowledge is still one that's perhaps missing in our industry.
You know what? It's a great question, because it's easy to say you learn on the job. That's generally how you learn, or how I learned. Certainly was sort of you learn by doing. And I certainly don't remember. CRM is certainly a subject taught at most universities here in Australia. Loyalty sometimes can be a bit of a subject, but not something that you can go off and get a PhD in. I think that a lot of the science that I've looked at and studied is partly around psychology and consumer behaviour. And I think around we should be reading books around influence and agents of change. As marketers, as businesses, we're trying to change behaviour, and then we're trying to retain that behaviour. And I think so for me, I'm obsessed about reading anything that has to do with psychology, consumer psychology, and then human-centered design has come a long way in the last sort of 10, 20 years as well, which has sort of, become mainstay for a lot of organizations. But I think if you cross psychology with even things such as addiction, and there's been loads, and you can look at the famous rat test where they get the rat addicted to the drug, and it taps the handle. And so I think there's a lot of similarities between that sort of dopamine hit that you get when you're addicted to something, whether that be something that's not good for you, or something that's not too bad for you, such as addicted to loyalty programs, which is probably a healthy addiction. And we not that we'd ever say it publicly, albeit this is public. There's sort of there are generally terminologies of which we call points junkies, and I'm a hands up points junkie. First day, my name's Aaron. I'm a points junkie, and I'm obsessed about looking for value. I think for me, So there's that. I think you can definitely go and study psychology. Is a great thing. I think, again, reading lots of books around change and influence is really important. I think there's the great classics around strategy and blue ocean strategy in regards to how do you create a proposition that is differentiated, that is almost hard to replicate. So you sort of then need to jump from how we behave and how we think to how you then create value. You need to mix that with your agile approach to how do you build stuff quickly, deploy it quickly, learn quickly, work out what the feedback is, and organize. And how do you think about loyalty as a product of which you can iterate and release on regularly, as opposed to here's our rigid program, we're not changing it, we hope you like it. And so I think that a combination of deep consumer understanding in terms of psychology, research, whether it be customer experience research, focusing a lot on sort of understanding the problem and the opportunity, then how do you go and change that? And then all you're doing, I mean, if you look at Wikipedia, under the term growth hacking, the definition of growth hacking is rapid experimentation, or at least was the last time Wikipedia was the definition of growth hacking. And so I think you and I, in all of our experience, and everyone who's sort of watching today, and all of our collective experience, what we did got us here, but it won't get you there. And I think that Ray Dalio in his book Principles talks about this phenomenal thing, which is you've got to learn to unlearn everything you've learned to get you to the next stage. That's really hard for us as humans to be open-minded to the fact that we're radically open-minded to the fact that we're wrong most of the time. To again quote Ray in his book. But more importantly is how to unlearn everything that you've learned, as opposed to this program worked when I was at that role, and that's what we're doing. And so you've got to go into it with an open mind. But the only way you can ever truly understand what's working is to work out what's the fastest putt to the hole of how we can stand up rapid experimentation to learn, because then you've got a data station of which, irrespective of what your view or my view or the CFO or the CEO's view is, you still may choose to ignore the data, but you've got data that's been driven by experiments that's been prioritized based on potential value, and then your ability to executing on those experiments. And there's very few organizations, certainly in Australia, but globally, that would say that they're where they want to be when it comes to the amount of experiments that they're running, ourselves included. So I think for me, that's the game, because you can have all the theory and you can have the experience, but if you're not able to test all these things and retest them, then I don't know how you succeed.
Amazing. And just as a recommendation from my side, I literally watched a video this week, which is a TED Talk, and there's not too many TED Talks that are necessarily relevant for loyalty professionals, but I think you'd like it, and I'm sure our audience will as well, so I will make sure to link to that. And it was Duolingo, and it was them sharing their insights around consumer psychology. And for sure, like, I'm a Duolingo, 281-day streak in terms of my habitual behavior. So definitely, these insights really work at a very human level, very simple level, in a way that I think more loyalty programs could benefit from studying. So thank you for sharing those insights. Listen, Aaron, I think we're coming up to the end of our time. So before we wrap up, was there anything else that you wanted to mention for our audience today?
Look, Paul, just for anyone to reach out, I think we're all better together when we share ideas in a way that's not constrained by competitor conflicts. And I think I was saying this to Epsilon in the session we had in Dubai earlier this year, which is there seems to be an amazing opportunity for someone, probably yourself in your position, Paul, in regards to how do you sort of build a community of people that share. You can sort of buddy up with someone that can be facing or have faced with similar issues that are maybe not in the Australian market or the American market. Certainly around whether that's first party data, whether that's the use of media offers, personalization, like in terms of the themes of stuff that we do. You could almost sort of say, look, if you want to know ideas on X, Y, and Z, hit me up. More than happy to share. So I guess it's saying there's in the instance of said community, or at least one that I'm not part of anyway, and more than happy to for anyone to reach out to me, and happy to share my views, and you can ignore them or use them at will.
Fantastic, Aaron. Well, listen, certainly from our perspective, watch this space. There is definitely a hunger for more community and connection for loyalty professionals. So for sure, we are keen to be a part of that. So we will talk offline about that some more. And I think I said to you before we started that I'm really looking forward to coming down to Australia for the first time in my life for the big conference in, I think it's August this year. I'm not sure if it's officially been confirmed in terms of the dates, but look forward to meeting with you in person and everyone in the Australian loyalty community. So it's been a really interesting conversation. Really excited. So I will literally say, Aaron Fuller, General Manager of Member Engagement with Super Retail Group, thank you so much from Let's Talk Loyalty and Loyalty TV.
Thank you so much, Paula. Take care.
Take care.